What is Apple's master plan, and why is the iPhone 14 going to be the stepping stone into something much larger that is going to lead to Apple's domination, not only in the smartphone space, but maybe the entire tech industry? Hey, what's going on everyone? Greg here, and let's unpack this because the iPhone 14 is shaping up to be one of the most hyped and perhaps one of the most important phone launches for Apple since the iPhone 10. I literally see this everywhere. People are hungry for iPhone 14 news and information in a way that they just weren't for the last few years, especially with the iPhone 13. And we're like really far away from the iPhone 14 actually being a product. Like we still have to wait until September to actually see this thing, but somehow it is on everyone's minds. And if you're like me, you've been contemplating why exactly the iPhone 14, out of all the other smartphones, has all this hype surrounding it, especially when I think if you ask a lot of people out there, they would say that smartphones are starting to get a little boring. Well, I think that's because there's a lot of rumored changes coming to the iPhone 14 that I think will make it one of Apple's most popular iPhone models ever. And if Apple continues the groundwork they laid with the iPhone 13, it could end up being one of the best smartphones of all time. Because Apple has learned a lot since the unveiling of the iPhone 12, where they kind of saturated the market with the most iPhone variety ever. And for the first time, we got 4 flagship iPhones to pick and choose from. Although the iPhone 12 and 13 were and are successful phones, Apple did make one key mistake when designing this lineup: the iPhone 12 and 13 mini. You see, when Apple was planning this lineup, as they usually do years in advance, there was a lot of hunger out there from die-hard Apple fans for a smaller iPhone. Apple was surprised by the original sales for the iPhone SE, and they were faced with 2 questions that decided the future of their lineup. First of all, was the iPhone SE success just because it came in at a cheaper price point? Or was the success due to the phone's smaller size, which had people picking that older design against the very popular iPhone 6s? Perhaps due to the popularity of that original SE model, Apple thought that they should attempt a more diverse lineup. And for the first time since the iPhone 5s, they offered a smaller size phone as a flagship option. And while the iPhone mini definitely has die-hard fans, and you can count me as one of them, sales for this device were just not in line for what Apple was expecting. Apple offered this phone at a pretty good price point for a flagship iPhone. It started at $699, and naturally, being the cheapest iPhone in the lineup, you would assume that in itself would be a huge boon for sales. But when the sales data finally emerged, what Apple and all of us found out was that people were just not buying the iPhone mini in large numbers, and most customers were actually gravitating towards larger, more expensive phones, with the iPhone 12 and 13 Pro Max gathering a staggering amount of the iPhone market share, even at its premium $1,099 price point. And it makes sense. The smartphone is in a very different place than it was in March of 2016. Phones have become people's main computing device, the place where they spend the most time more than any other computer they have in their household. And when a device becomes your main device, the 2 main benefits that you would want with it is as big of a screen as possible and a bigger battery, so you can spend even more time on your device without battery anxiety. Well, Greg, why bring all this up? We're talking about the iPhone 14, not the iPhone 12 and the iPhone 13. Well, it's important to keep this in mind because Apple is revising their strategy, and it is going to be, in my opinion, a massive success. Because Apple is not ditching the 4-model iPhone system, but instead, they are replacing the iPhone 13 mini with the complete opposite: a bigger iPhone 14. This iPhone 14 is rumored to be called the iPhone 14 Max, and it sounds exactly like what you would expect it to be: a bigger version of the iPhone 14, but without all of the Pro features or material choices of the iPhone 14 Pro, which means a cheaper, bigger iPhone. And this, let's call it the iPhone 14 Max, would in my mind be $100 more than the iPhone 14. And that means it would sit below the $1,000 price point, making it an attractive option against the Pro Max. For this $100 extra, the 14 Max would feature two distinct advantages over the regular size 14. A bigger 6.7-inch OLED display and, of course, a bigger battery. To the point where this iPhone 14 Max will probably have one of the best battery life ratings out of any iPhone ever. And if you spend less, it's very likely that this phone will even beat out the iPhone 14 Pro, the 6.1-inch size Pro model, in those battery life charts. And this will be the first time in a long time that Apple has made a bigger size flagship phone under $1,000, with the last one in recent memory being the iPhone 8 Plus. And that alone has the potential to be a big deal, because the price range of $600 to $900 is targeting a very specific group of users, mid-range Android users. Sure, the price is not cheap, I'm not saying it's cheap, but it's not unreasonable either, and this customer base is used to bigger phones, making it the perfect opportunity for Apple to grow the iPhone market share even more. Not only in other markets like China, where bigger phones are extremely popular, but all over the world, especially when you figure that in the third quarter of last year, Apple had strong double-digit growth for Android switchers and for phone upgrades. And this dominance is painfully clear in the US market. In particular, this is where the strategy can lead to unparalleled success, because there is a reason why people are leaving Android to come into the warm embraces of Apple: iMessage. I'm sure you've seen the videos and read the articles talking about Apple's blue bubble dominance, where if you're using an iPhone, at least in the US, you are probably using iMessage to carry your day-to-day messaging conversations, as it combines a robust end-to-end messaging system and also the option to send SMS text messages, which are still pretty popular in the United States. Whether you agree or disagree with Apple's strategy here, one of the easiest ways to communicate with a large percentage of the population in the US is with iMessage, and it's one of the biggest disadvantages that Android smartphone manufacturers face, particularly with a younger demographic. With recent studies saying that 87% of teens reported owning an iPhone, and perhaps even more importantly, 88% of teenagers in the US are saying that their next phone purchase will be an iPhone. That's an even bigger percentage than the estimated 54% market share that iOS currently holds over Android in the United States. This level of customer loyalty is insanely high, and in the next few years, teens, which currently have very little buying power, will enter into the workforce and have disposable income, which could lead to even greater iPhone success in the coming years. As not only are iPhone sales going to grow with this audience, but these young adults will also carry influence over to the older generation, namely their parents. And armed with the virtues of how easy it is to stay in touch with an iPhone, that may in fact influence their parents' next smartphone purchasing decision to be an iPhone. And although iMessage may be the stickiest part of this Apple ecosystem, it's not the only part. And Apple is focusing ever more on services and ever-growing advantages for maintaining and staying within the Apple ecosystem. There is a level of stickiness here for users that may have them picking a smartphone for more than just the hardware. There are tremendous software advantages for going with iOS and for staying in Apple's ecosystem, and that goes down to even other purchases like buying a Mac, buying an Apple Watch, buying an iPad, dare I say, buying a virtual or an augmented reality headset. Still, the hardware for 2022 is looking to be impressive, with Apple giving us a major redesign of the iPhone perhaps sooner than expected, with rumors that this is the year that Apple finally removes the notch and puts the I in iPhone with this combination of a pill and hole punch cutout. This may sound like small potatoes, but one of the primary reasons that people upgrade to a new phone over another is how it looks. And a new design for Apple means more upgrades this year than if they kept the phone looking exactly the same. Pile that on with rumors of a big camera improvement, with Apple bumping up the megapixel count for the first time since the iPhone success, which moved from an 8 megapixel sensor to a 12 megapixel sensor. And now Apple is rumored to now be increasing that from a 12 megapixel sensor to a 48 megapixel sensor, and combine that with 8K video for the first time on an iPhone. And on top of all that, combine that with Apple's amazing computational algorithms for their photography, and it could be a big boost in quality to one of the best consumer-facing features, and one of the most deciding factors on whether or not they upgrade or purchase a phone: the camera. The iPhone 14 is giving its loyal users the upgrades they want the most, and also enticing Android users on the other side of the fence who might consider switching. It's the perfect storm for an iPhone buying bonanza this year that may in fact struggle to keep up with the demand, and it lays the groundwork for the next few years of iPhone upgrade cycles, where Apple is entering into an unparalleled market of customer loyalty, and it could make the iPhone demolish any attempt at Android ever gaining enough significant foothold in the United States. Apple's master plan is finally taking shape, and it's going to be interesting to see how this unfolds. But that's just a theory, an Apple theory. Sorry, wrong channel. But hopefully you enjoyed this video, and if you did, be sure you leave me a like. And if you want to see more, make sure you're subscribed. And hey, I want to know what you think about this video. Do you agree with me that Apple is creating an unparalleled strategy here for dominating the US market? And do you think that the iPhone 14 is really going to lay the groundwork here and just be a massive success based on the models they're releasing this year? And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Take care, everyone.